The crash of a glass was nothing new in the Brooklyn trattoria, but the silence that followed was. It rolled through the room like a cold draft, brushing the back of Claire Dalton's neck as she wiped down table 7. Thursday nights were usually loud forks clinking, old jazz humming from the dusty speaker, college kids arguing about rent. But tonight, everything shifted the second 4 men in tailored charcoal coats walked in. They didn't belong in a place where the receipts were handwritten and the floorboards groaned. They carried themselves the way Manhattan men did, controlled, expensive, untouchable. The kind of presence that made customers sit up straight without knowing why. Claire didn't look up right away. She was tired, her feet numb inside worn sneakers, her ponytail falling loose again. She just grabbed a notepad, exhaled, and walked over, because that was her job, even when life didn't give her room to breathe. "Welcome," she said, voice calm. Table for the man at the center turned slightly. That alone shifted the air. His suit was black, subtle but devastatingly clean. A Montblanc pen glinted in his breast pocket. An iPhone lay face down on the table the moment he sat. His face was unreadable, knife-cut jawline, eyes dark, like a storm about to choose where to land. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He simply looked at Claire as if surprised she existed. And then he dismissed her with a tilt of his hand. Most servers would have apologized. Most people in Brooklyn already knew who he was. Luca Moretti, the kind of name that echoed through whispers. Claire didn't. Or maybe she was too exhausted to care. She held her ground. "Sir," she said calmly, "I just need your order." A couple nearby gasped. One of Luca's men stiffened. Chairs scraped quietly. Luca finally looked up. "You're new!" His voice was low, smooth, dangerous in a way that didn't rely on volume. "No," Claire replied. "I'm just not waiting all night for you to acknowledge me." Another inhale from the room. A fork dropped. Michelle at the bar mouthed, "Claire, what are you doing?" Luca leaned back in his seat, studying her like she was an equation he hadn't solved yet. "You're the first person," he said slowly, "who's spoken to me like that." Claire lifted her chin. "Maybe you needed it." The corner of his mouth twitched, not a smile, more like the shadow of one. Then he turned to the man on his right. "She's the first to refuse me," he murmured, voice dipping into something darker. "Bring her!" Claire froze. The guard rose from his chair. Her pulse spiked. The room held its breath. Michelle started moving toward her. But Luca didn't look away. He watched Claire like she had just rewritten a rule he'd lived by his entire life. And that was the moment Claire realized she wasn't dealing with a rude customer. She was dealing with a man no one ever said no to, and he wasn't about to let her walk away. "Don't touch me," Claire whispered, just as the guard reached for her shoulder. Claire Dalton had learned how to disappear long before she turned 27, not by choice, but by survival. In a city that moved too fast, she lived in the quiet cracks scraping tips into a jar, holding coupons in her worn wallet, driving a Toyota Corolla that coughed every time she prayed it would start. She carried the kind of exhaustion that didn't show on her face, but lived in her shoulders, her posture, her eyes when she thought no one was looking. But Claire never complained. She couldn't afford to. After their mother died, she became mother-sister-guardian all at once to Evan, a 15-year-old who still kept her grocery lists on his phone just to feel helpful. She worked double shifts, clipped coupons, and washed uniforms by hand when the laundromat raised prices again. At night, she studied bookkeeping on her second-hand MacBook Air, hoping someday she'd escape the grind. Brooklyn was crowded, but Claire's world always felt small, just her, Evan, and a list of bills that never stopped growing. And yet, despite everything life had done to her, she still carried dignity like armor. She didn't bow, she didn't soften her voice for rude customers. She didn't allow anyone, no matter how rich or loud, to treat her like she was invisible. That's why the encounter with Luca Moretti felt so wrong, so insulting, so deeply unfair. She didn't know him, didn't know his world, his power, His reputation whispered in the alleys of Manhattan. She only knew what she felt when he flicked his hand at her like a servant. Heat rising in her chest, her jaw tightening, the memory of every person who had ever tried to make her small. So she stood straighter. She refused him the way she refused the world, quietly, firmly, without apology. But now, walking into the back hallway of the trattoria, with her heart still pounding, she realized something else. This wasn't a man she should have said no to. This wasn't someone who let disrespect slide. And when Michelle grabbed her wrist and whispered, "Claire, do you know who that was?" Claire's world shifted again. "No," Claire said, "and I don't care." Michelle's face drained of color. "You should. Because once his men start moving, there's no undoing it." Before Claire could respond, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Someone was coming for her. And they were not walking like they planned to talk. Luca Moretti wasn't born ruthless. He was shaped that way. By 35, he had inherited a real estate empire that stretched across Manhattan, from glass towers on Park Avenue to waterfront developments overlooking the Hudson. The world saw polished marble floors, private elevators, contracts signed with a Mont Blanc pen that never once shook in his hand. They didn't see the cost of becoming Luca Moretti. His father had drilled into him a single rule: power is only real when no one refuses you. By 14, Luca no longer flinched at threats. By 25, he no longer trusted anyone. By 30, he spoke in silences that made grown men swallow their pride. People didn't deny him. They didn't challenge him. They didn't look him in the eye unless he allowed it. That's why the waitress in Brooklyn, wearing a faded apron and holding a notepad smudged with ink, had unsettled him in a way he hadn't felt since he was a teenager. She didn't know his name. She didn't care about his reputation. She simply stood there and refused to bend. Most women chased his money. Others feared his shadow. Claire Dalton? She looked at him like he was just a man taking too long to order. And that fascinated him. Luca had come to the trattoria for one reason: to meet an informant quietly, without drawing attention. But the moment Claire spoke, his focus shattered. Her voice was soft but unshaken, a voice that didn't tremble even as the room stiffened around them. "She's the first to refuse me," Luca murmured to his right-hand man, Roman. "Bring her!" But even as he said it, curiosity stirred beneath the command. Who was she? Why wasn't she afraid? How had someone with tired eyes and a fading ponytail managed to strike at the single part of him still capable of feeling something? Roman leaned close. "Boss, do you want her escorted or questioned?" Luca didn't answer immediately. His gaze stayed locked on the hallway where Claire had disappeared. Something in her posture, tense but still proud, pulled at him with a force he couldn't explain. He wasn't used to uncertainty. He wasn't used to wanting answers he couldn't demand. "Follow her," Luca finally said. "Nobody touches her unless I say so." But the tension in his jaw, the flicker in his eyes, those were new. Even Roman noticed. "Boss," he asked quietly, "is she a problem?" Luca's fingers tapped once against the table. "No," he said, "she's a complication." And complications were the one thing Luca Moretti could not afford, especially when they looked back at him with fearless eyes. Brooklyn and Manhattan were only separated by a river, but for Claire and Luca, they might as well have been two different planets. Claire's world was built from crowded sidewalks, flickering streetlights, and a paycheck that never quite stretched far enough. The trattoria sat between a laundromat that always smelled like burning lint and a barbershop with posters fading in the window. Every morning she passed the same cracked pavement, the same graffiti-tagged brick, the same corner where street vendors sold coffee in paper cups for $2. She loved it anyway. It was familiar, predictable, honest. Luca's Manhattan wasn't any of those things. His penthouse rose 40 stories over Fifth Avenue, where the glass walls reflected the skyline like a promise he never trusted. Inside, everything was sharp and quiet, imported stone floors, minimalist furniture, a grand piano he never touched. The air always smelled faintly of expensive cologne and polished wood. Even his elevator required a fingerprint scan, the kind of security that told you danger wasn't an idea in Luca's life, but a daily companion. At night, Claire stared at overdue bills on her second-hand table. Luca stared at contracts worth millions on his marble desk. She carried stacks of plates. He carried the weight of an empire. She worried about rent. He worried about loyalty and betrayal. And yet their worlds intersected with enough force to alter both. After leaving the trattoria, Luca didn't go straight home. He stood outside a moment, letting the cold wind hit his face. The city hummed under street lamps, traffic hissing along the asphalt, sirens echoing faintly in the distance. He should have been thinking about the informant he came to meet. Instead, he replayed the image of Claire lifting her chin at him, unshaken. Back inside, Claire cleaned the counter absent-mindedly, trying to slow her heartbeat. Brooklyn felt smaller tonight, shadows stretching longer than usual. Michelle's warning wouldn't leave her mind. "Do you know who that was?" "No," Claire had said, "and I don't want to." But wanting didn't matter. The moment Luca Moretti took notice of someone, their world shifted, geography, power, safety, all rearranged by a man used to bending cities to his will. Claire didn't know it yet, but Brooklyn would not protect her from what was coming. Because in Manhattan, deep inside a building guarded by men in tailored suits, Luca was already giving his next order. And it had everything to do with her. Dominic Hale had the kind of presence that made the air feel thinner when he entered a room. Not loud, not chaotic, just wrong in a way instincts recognized before consciousness did. Where Luca Moretti ruled through silent precision, Dominic ruled through fear sharpened into an art form. His empire stretched through the underbelly of New York, slipping into places Luca refused to touch. Off-grid casinos, back-alley trades, debts collected in quiet corners where no one dared scream. He was older than Luca by nearly a decade, but age hadn't softened him. If anything, it had carved new edges into him. Dominic's suits were immaculate, dark navy or charcoal, always paired with a vintage Rolex he wore like a warning. He had a smile people feared more than a gun, because when Dominic smiled, it meant he had already decided how the night would end. And he hated the Morettis. Not in the dramatic, headline-making way. No, Dominic preferred slower methods. Poison over bullets. Leverage over blood. He believed patience broke a man more thoroughly than violence ever could. That's why Claire Dalton became important to him long before she even knew his name. His informant at the trattoria had whispered to him earlier that evening. The Moretti heir lost focus over a waitress. Dominic didn't react at first. He simply continued swirling the bourbon in his glass, watching the amber liquid catch the dim bar light. Luca didn't lose focus. Luca didn't get distracted. Luca didn't look twice at anyone unless they were a threat. A waitress? A nobody from Brooklyn? Impossible, but interesting. Dominic had once told his closest advisor, "Every strong man has one weak hinge. Find it, and the door collapses on its own." If Luca truly flinched emotionally, instinctively, even for 1 second, Dominic intended to find out why. And use it. He leaned back in his leather chair, the skyline glowing behind him like a wall of fire. "What's her name?" he asked. "Claire Dalton," the informant replied. "A delicate one?" "No, stubborn." She refused him. Dominic's brows rose slightly. A refusal? To Luca Moretti. That was more than interesting. That was leverage. He tapped a finger against his glass, calculating. "Watch her," he said softly. "People who don't fear power often don't understand how dangerous the world really is." He stood, slipping on his coat, the Rolex glinting under the bar's low light. And when Luca realizes she's vulnerable, he smiled. "That's when we strike." What Dominic didn't know yet was that Claire was already on his radar, and he was already on hers. The trattoria's dinner rush was fading when the incident began subtle at first, like a shift in the wind. Claire was wiping down a counter when the front door slammed open hard enough to rattle the silverware. A group of men entered, not Luca's, but dressed in sharp, unfamiliar suits. the kind of men who scanned a room before taking a step. Brooklyn locals? Not a chance, Michelle whispered. Claire, don't move. But it was too late. One of the men spotted her immediately. A hush fell over the dining room. Families paused mid-bite. A couple near the window slowly set down their forks. Even the old speaker seemed to quiet itself. The tallest man stepped forward. Claire Dalton? Her spine locked. Can I help you? He pulled something from his jacket, a photograph. Her photograph, one she'd only ever used for HR paperwork. The edges were creased like it had been handled too often. We need you to come with us. Claire blinked. Excuse me, I'm working. The man didn't smile. Miss, this is safer for everyone if you cooperate. Michelle's hand squeezed Claire's arm. These aren't Moretti men, she whispered, voice trembling. Claire, these are Hale people. The name hit Claire like an icy wind. Michelle had explained enough earlier. Dominic Hale didn't show interest without reason, and his reasons were never good. A customer stood abruptly. Hey, leave her alone. She's a waitress, man. The suited man turned his head slowly, eyes cold. Sit down. The customer did. Another man blocked the exit. Chairs scraped. A baby began to cry. The trattoria had never felt smaller, never felt more fragile. Claire stepped forward, forcing her voice to hold steady. You can't just walk in here, and we can. The man cut in. And we will. Dominic Hale requests your presence. Claire felt her blood run cold. Why? How did he know her name? Why did men like these even care? Luca's earlier command replayed in her head. She's the first to refuse me. Bring her. Was this connected? Or was this something even darker? Before she could ask, the man reached for her arm. Michelle gasped. Someone in the back shouted to call 911. Phones lifted. Chaos cracked through the room like lightning. And then, the door slammed open a second time. But this time, it wasn't Hale men walking in. It was Luca Moretti. And he did not look like a man who planned to negotiate. The trattoria was in chaos when Luca stepped in. But Claire's world had already narrowed to the pressure of a stranger's hand on her arm and the pounding fear in her chest. She didn't hear the gasps, didn't see customers ducking behind tables. She only felt the sudden pull of panic squeezing her ribs. 1 second she was standing, the next her knees nearly buckled. Michelle caught her. Claire, breathe! Hey, look at me! Just breathe! But she couldn't. The room was spinning, tilting, shrinking in on itself. Her vision blurred at the edges, breaths coming too fast to swallow. She hadn't had a panic episode since her mother died, but the memory of that same drowning sensation clawed up her throat now. The Hale man tightened his grip. Come quietly, Miss Dalton. You don't want this to let her go. Luca's voice cut through the panic like a blade. It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. The Hale men froze. Michelle froze. Even Claire froze, though her pulse remained wild and sharp. Luca stepped forward, his expression carved from stone. For the first time, Claire saw something frighteningly close to fury burning behind his calm exterior. Not the arrogant kind she expected from a powerful man, but something deeper, colder, controlled only by the thinnest thread. You're scaring her, Michelle whispered angrily to the Hale men. Not anymore, Luca said. Claire tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I can't breathe. Her hands trembled. Heat rushed to her face. Her lungs felt locked, useless. Without hesitation, Luca moved in front of her, blocking out the rest of the room. His presence didn't magically erase the panic, but it steadied something like a heavy door bracing against a storm. Claire, he said quietly, look at me. Her eyes flicked up, unfocused. You're safe. It was a lie. She wasn't safe, not with Hale men, not with Moretti men, not with anyone who lived between shadows and whispered names. But the certainty in Luca's tone cracked through the fog, just enough for her to inhale, shaky and shallow. Behind him, his men closed in, locking down the room. Dominic Hale had started a war Claire never asked for. And suddenly, she was standing in the center of two giants, ready to tear the city apart. Luca's gaze sharpened as he turned slightly, positioning himself between her and everyone else. "Take another step toward her," he warned the Haleman, "and you'll regret it." The Haleman smirked right before revealing something that made Claire's chest collapse all over again. The Haleman's smirk widened, slow and deliberate, as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment, waiting for Luca's fuse to reach its end. The trattoria was silent, the kind of silence that made every heartbeat sound louder. Claire, still trembling, clung to the edge of the counter behind her. "You think we came here to take her?" the Haleman said, voice low, mocking. "But you really should ask yourself, Moretti." His gaze slid to Claire. "Why she matters." Luca didn't move, but the tension around him shifted sharp, electric, dangerous. Claire frowned. "What are you talking about? I don't even know you." "That's the point," the Haleman replied. "You don't know us, but someone else does." Michelle grabbed Claire's hand, her whisper shaking. "Don't listen to him," but Claire couldn't look away. Something icy climbed her spine. The Haleman pulled a folded sheet from his coat and tossed it onto a nearby table. A photograph slid out grainy, taken from far away, but unmistakable. It was Claire, standing outside her apartment. From weeks ago. Claire's stomach dropped. "Why do you have that?" "Because you've been under watch," he said. "Long before tonight. Long before you ever met Luca." Luca's jaw hardened. "By who?" The man chuckled. "By someone who knew she'd matter to you. Someone who predicted you'd become distracted." Claire felt Luca stiffen beside her, but he didn't deny it. The Haleman continued. "You didn't think this was random, did you, sweetheart? You didn't think a simple waitress caught in the middle of a war was coincidence?" Claire's pulse thrashed. A horrible thought formed and wanted. Impossible, yet taking shape. She turned to Luca. "Did you know? Did you know someone was watching me?" Luca's eyes flickered just for a second, but it was enough. Claire's breath caught. "Luca!" He didn't answer, and the silence was worse than any truth. The Haleman leaned back slightly, enjoying every fracture forming in front of him. "Dominic doesn't pick random pieces," he said. "He picks the ones that hurt the most. And you? You've been his chosen piece for months." Claire felt her knees weaken again, but this time from something colder than fear. "Months," she whispered. "Before I even met you?" Luca finally spoke, voice rougher than before. "Claire, let me explain." "No," the Haleman cut in, eyes gleaming. "Let me." He stepped closer, savoring the moment. "Claire," he said softly, almost kindly, "do you know the real reason Dominic wants you? Because you were never just a bystander. You were the bait." Claire's breath stopped right as the front window shattered behind them. Glass exploded across the floor, screams echoing as Claire stumbled backward into Luca's arms. His men surged forward instantly, forming a barrier between the Hale attackers and the terrified customers. But Claire's mind wasn't on the chaos. Not entirely. It was on the truth she'd just been handed like a blade aimed at her chest. Bait. Chosen. Watched for months. Her knees felt weak, but something inside her, something she hadn't touched in years, began to snap into place. Fear, yes. But underneath it, anger. A quiet, rising heat that pushed back against the panic closing around her lungs. She'd been powerless all her life. Over bills, over danger, over the world pushing her around simply because it could. But not tonight. Not anymore. Luca pushed her behind him as another Haleman climbed through the shattered window. "Stay down!" he ordered. But Claire didn't crouch. She didn't run. She looked around the trattoria, the overturned chairs, the shards of glass. Michelle crying behind the counter, and something inside her hardened. "I'm done being hunted," she whispered. Michelle grabbed her arm. "Claire, please, this is not the time to be brave." But bravery wasn't what Claire felt. It was clarity, the kind that only comes when your life burns down in front of you and you realize you either stay ashes or rise. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, straightened her apron, and looked Luca dead in the eye. "You lied to me." Luca flinched, actually flinched at the accusation. I didn't lie. I just didn't know how to tell you the truth. That I was being watched? That Dominic picked me? That I'm in danger because of you?" He stepped closer, shadow slicing his jawline. "Because of us, Claire. He chose you because you shook me. You shouldn't apologize for that." "I'm not apologizing," she said. "I'm deciding what to do with it." Behind them, Roman shouted, "Boss! More coming in!" Luca grabbed her hand. "We need to go. Now!" Claire shook her head. "Then teach me. Teach me what I'm facing, because I'm done being the weak one." He stared at her, really looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, not as a waitress caught in a war, but as someone capable of standing in it. "You don't know what you're asking," he said quietly. Claire lifted her chin. "I'm asking to survive." And before Luca could answer, a hail bullet tore through the ceiling above them, showering sparks over Claire's face. The night didn't calm, it escalated. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights painted the outside of the trattoria, but no officer dared cross Luca Moretti's line. His men had already sealed the block, forming a shield around the broken restaurant, as if it were a battlefield drawn in chalk and glass. Dominic Hale had made his move publicly. And Luca, he intended to answer just as loudly. "Get her out the back," Roman ordered. "No," Luca said, pulling Claire close. "They came into my city, my territory. They want a spectacle? I'll give them one." Claire's heart hammered, but she wasn't the same terrified woman from half an hour ago. Rage simmered beneath her skin, rage at being hunted, manipulated, used. Rage at men deciding she was something to trade. Rage that had nowhere to go until now. Outside, Hale's men regrouped behind two black SUVs. A drone hovered above, filming everything. Dominic wanted the world to see Moretti exposed. Claire swallowed hard. "Luca, they planned this." "I know." "They're filming you." "I know." "Then what are you doing?" His eyes dark, steady, furious, locked onto hers. "Ending it!" He stepped forward, dragging Claire gently but firmly beside him, as though he needed her to see this, or needed her to understand who he really was when someone crossed the line. Roman shouted orders. Engines revved. The city hummed with the tension of something violent waiting to snap. Luca stopped 10 feet from the Hale men. "You entered my space," he called out. "You targeted what's mine." Claire stiffened, but Luca didn't correct himself. "You want a message?" Luca continued. "Here it is." He nodded once. Two of his men moved instantly, slamming a Hale enforcer onto the hood of a car. Cameras flashed. Gasps rang from the crowd forming behind police tape. Claire's breath hitched not from fear, but from realizing the truth. Luca wasn't protecting his empire. He was retaliating for her. She touched his arm. "Stop! They'll use this against you." Luca didn't look at her. "They already have." The Hale commander stepped forward, unbothered by the chaos. "Careful, Moretti," he taunted. "Dominic doesn't lose." Luca's jaw flexed. "Neither do I." The commander smirked and snapped his fingers. A second SUV door opened. Claire froze. Because the person stepping out wasn't a Hale soldier. It was someone she knew. Someone who should have never been involved. Someone Dominic had taken. Claire's world caved in the moment the SUV door swung open. Her breath snapped in her throat, knees nearly giving out as she whispered a single name. Evan, her little brother, stood there, hands shaking, a bruise forming along his cheekbone. He wasn't tied, but fear held him tighter than any rope could. The boy who always tried to be brave for her now looked impossibly small beneath the streetlights. Claire stumbled forward, a tear slipping before she could stop it. "Evan, baby, are you hurt?" Dominic's man tightened a hand on the teen's shoulder. "He's fine, for now." Luca inhaled sharply. For the first time all night, his composure cracked. His fury didn't erupt outward. It collapsed inward, darkening his expression until even his own men glanced at him nervously. "Dominic crossed the line," Roman murmured behind him. "No," Luca said, voice low. "He erased it. Claire grabbed Luca's sleeve, trembling. Why my brother? Why drag him into this? He's a kid. Luca's jaw tightened. Because Dominic knows I won't risk you, and now he knows you won't risk him. He looked at Evan, really looked. You have something he can't buy, something he can't threaten me with directly. Claire swallowed. Family. Luca nodded once, pain flickering in his eyes. Exactly. For a moment, the world blurred around them, the sirens, the crowd, the flashing lights. All Claire could feel was helplessness crushing her ribcage, the same helplessness she'd lived with for years, magnified by the knowledge that her brother's life was now tangled in a war she never asked to be part of. And Luca, he wasn't doing any better. He stepped back, hands curling into fists. His control, the thing he relied on more than breath, was slipping. Claire saw it, the way his shoulders tensed, the way his gaze darted to Evan, like calculating 1,000 deadly outcomes at once. He wasn't afraid of Dominic. He was afraid of failing them. Claire, he said quietly, I swear on everything I have. I will not let Dominic take him. Her voice broke. You already lost control tonight. What if you can't stop him? Luca met her eyes raw, unguarded, human. Then I'll fall trying. Before Claire could respond, Dominic's man lifted a phone. It's time you heard Dominic's offer. He pressed play, and Dominic's voice filled the street, speaking Claire's name like he'd known it his entire life. Dominic's voice poured from the phone speaker with a smoothness that made Claire's stomach twist. It wasn't the growl she expected from a man capable of kidnapping. No, Dominic Hale sounded calm. Charming, even. The tone of a man who thought he was in complete control. Claire Dalton, he began, pronouncing her name like it amused him. You've caused quite the reaction tonight. Claire gripped Evan's trembling hand. What do you want from us? Dominic chuckled softly through the speaker. From you? Nothing you haven't already given me. Luca stepped forward, eyes narrowing. Hale, let the kid go. This has nothing to do with him. Oh, but it does, Dominic replied. You see, Luca, you taught me something tonight. Even the strongest man breaks when the right pressure is applied. Claire's pulse hammered. She felt Luca stiffen beside her, anger rising like a storm he was barely containing. Dominic continued. I don't want money. I don't want territory. That's too predictable. No, what I want, a pause, is her. Claire froze. Me? Dominic sighed dramatically. Not in the lazy, vulgar way you're thinking. I want your presence, your influence, your effect on Luca. The smile in his voice was unmistakable. You destabilize him. That is far more valuable than any deal. Luca stepped closer to the phone, voice deadly low. You are not touching her. But I already have, Dominic answered. Look at her shaking, terrified, pulled into your world with no escape route. You did that, Luca. Not me. Claire felt the words dig deep, poisonous and precise. Here is my offer, Dominic said. Claire comes with me willingly, and the boy goes home unharmed. Claire's breath caught. Evan squeezed her hand, voice cracking. Claire, don't. Please don't. Dominic added, You have until midnight. If she refuses, well, accidents happen, especially to brave little brothers who walk home from school. Claire's chest tightened, vision blurring with panic and fury. You monster! Careful, Dominic whispered. Every insult you throw makes me reconsider my generosity. Luca stepped between Claire and the phone, as if shielding her from the voice itself. She's not going anywhere with you, Dominic. A soft laugh. We'll see. The call ended. Silence crashed over the street. Claire's breath fractured. Evan clung to her shirt. Luca stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight it trembled. And then Roman swallowed hard. Boss midnight is less than 3 hours. Claire looked up at Luca, only to realize he already had a plan. A plan she might not survive. Claire had always imagined sacrifice as something noble, something bright. A heroic moment in a movie. But standing in the dim back alley behind the trattoria, the city humming with danger. She learned the truth. Sacrifice felt like swallowing broken glass. Evan sat in the back seat of Roman's SUV, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red from crying. Every few seconds, he pressed his palms together the way he used to when he was little, like praying silently, even though he didn't believe in prayer anymore. "Claire?" he whispered, voice cracking. "Please don't even think about going. I'll be fine. We'll be fine." But Claire wasn't looking at Evan. She was looking at Luca. He stood a few feet away, shadows cutting across his face, tension radiating from him like heat. For the first time since they met, he didn't look composed. He looked afraid. "Don't even consider his offer," Luca said, stepping closer. "Dominic doesn't negotiate. He destroys. Walking into his hands is suicide." Claire's voice trembled. "He'll hurt Evan. He won't get the chance." "You don't know that." Luca froze at the desperation in her tone. Claire pressed a shaking hand to her forehead. The night felt too heavy, too loud, suffocating. She thought of every moment raising Evan alone, the nights she stayed awake to make sure he finished homework, the mornings she skipped breakfast so he could eat, the quiet promises she whispered when he slept. "I will keep you safe. I won't fail you like the world failed us." "How can I live with myself?" Claire whispered, "if something happens to him because of me?" Luca stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And how will he live if he loses you?" Her breath broke. "This isn't about choosing who survives," Luca said gently. "It's about refusing to let Dominic win. He wants to corner you into sacrificing yourself. That's his game." "But it's my choice," Claire said, voice steadier than she felt. "And I can't risk Evan." Luca grabbed her wrist, not forcefully, but like he was anchoring her. "You walk into Dominic's hands, Claire, and I can't guarantee I'll reach you in time. He won't hurt the boy unless I don't go," she whispered. Silence stretched. Then Claire gently pulled her wrist free. "I'm going." "No," Luca said immediately. "I won't let you. You can't stop me." Luca's expression hardened, not with anger, but with something far more painful. "Yes, I can," Claire blinked. "What does that mean?" Luca exhaled shakily. "It means I'm done letting you walk into danger, whether you hate me for it or not." Before Claire could step back, Luca nodded to Roman, and everything around her shifted in an instant. Before Claire could react, Roman stepped behind her and gently but firmly caught her arms. She stiffened, confusion flaring into panic. "Roman," she whispered. Please don't do this." "It's for your safety," he muttered, voice strained. Luca ran a hand through his hair, pacing once like a man fighting the urge to punch through concrete. "Claire, listen to me. Dominic wants you afraid. He wants you desperate. That's the only way he wins." She struggled against Roman's grip. "And what is this, Luca? Controlling me? Forcing me? How is that any different?" Luca stopped, turned, and in that moment, every layer of the Moretti reputation stripped away, leaving a man who looked exhausted, not from battle, but from caring too much. "This is different," he said quietly, "because I'm not controlling you to gain power. I'm doing it to keep you alive." Claire shook her head, tears burning hot. "You think that makes it easier?" "No," Luca admitted, "but it makes it necessary." He nodded at Roman again. The gesture was subtle, hesitant, but real. Roman began guiding Claire toward the SUV. Claire's heart pounded. "Luca, stop! My brother needs me." "Evan." "He's already safe," Luca said. She froze. "What?" Luca pointed behind her. There, 2 blocks away, Moretti vehicles slid into position, like shadows taking form. Evan was being escorted toward another car, surrounded by security with bulletproof vests. The boy looked shaken but unharmed. Claire's knees nearly buckled from relief. You got him out?" "Of course I did," Luca replied, voice rough. "I told you I wouldn't let Dominic touch him. But he will if I don't go." "No," Luca said, stepping closer. "He'll try. And that's the difference. Trying gives me room to stop him. Handing yourself over? That gives him everything. Claire stared at him, chest tight. So what now? You lock me away somewhere? Yes, Luca said simply, until Dominic is neutralized. The bluntness cut her breath short. I'm not your prisoner, she whispered. You're not, he said softly. You're the only leverage Dominic has, and I'm removing it from the board. Claire's anger surged. You don't get to decide that for me. Luca met her fury with quiet intensity. I already have. Roman opened the SUV door. Claire took a step back, but Luca stepped forward, blocking her escape, his voice dropping into something raw and unguarded. Claire, please. Let me protect you, even if you hate me for it. Before she could answer, a gunshot cracked across the alley, and the bullet missed Luca by less than an inch. The gunshot ricocheted off the brick wall, sparks flying. Luca shoved Claire behind him, his arm wrapping around her instinctively. Roman fired back, his men sweeping into tactical positions as the alley erupted into chaos. Sniper! One of Luca's guards shouted. Move her! Luca barked. But Claire wasn't listening. Her heart was thundering, yes, but not from fear alone. Something about the sniper's angle, the timing, the precision. None of it felt like a warning shot. It felt personal. Within seconds, Luca's men secured the upper fire escape, dragging down a masked figure. The sniper hit the ground hard, grunting as Roman ripped off the mask. Claire's breath caught. The man wasn't one of Dominic's usual soldiers. He wasn't even familiar. He's freelance, Roman muttered. Hired gun. Hired by who? Luca demanded. The sniper spat blood. You already know. Luca's grip on Claire tightened. His voice dropped into something murderous. Hale wants her dead? The sniper laughed a broken, breathless sound. Not Hale. Hale wants her alive. Someone else wants the opposite. Claire felt the world tilt. Someone else? The sniper flicked his eyes toward her. He said the girl's death would break you, that it would ruin you more than losing territory. Claire frowned. Me? I don't even know. But Luca stiffened. Completely. Utterly. Like someone had just torn open an old wound. Roman saw it too. Boss, what aren't you telling us? Luca didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the sniper, but something far darker was happening behind them. Memories shifting, ghosts rising. The sniper smirked. You didn't tell her, did you? About the last woman who got close to you? Claire's stomach dropped. Luca! Luca finally looked at her. And for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for what she was about to learn. It was years ago, he said quietly. Before you. Before any of this. But the sniper cut him off. He couldn't protect her. Dominic didn't kill that one. No, this was someone else. Someone who wanted Moretti broken. Someone who learned his weakness early. Claire's heart pounded. What weakness? The sniper smiled through blood. You fall in love too easily, Moretti. Claire froze. The alley went silent. Roman swore under his breath. Luca didn't deny it. Before Claire could speak, the sniper laughed again, a rasping, dying sound. And the man who ordered me to kill her tonight? The same man who killed the last one. Claire felt her pulse stop. His name, she whispered. Tell me his name. But the sniper's head dropped before he could finish the sentence. The sniper's body hit the pavement with a dull thud, and the alley fell into a suffocating silence. Claire stood frozen, her breath trembling in the cold night air. Luca didn't move for several seconds. His jaw clenched, eyes locked on the fallen man, as if the truth had punched straight through his ribs. Roman stepped forward. Boss, we need to leave. Dominic's men will be circling back, no. Luca's voice was low but sharp. We're done reacting. We take the fight to him. Now. Claire swallowed hard. You still don't know who hired that sniper. But Luca did know. She could see it buried beneath the rage, beneath the fear recognition flickering like a shadow he tried to kill long ago. Luca, she whispered. Tell me the truth. Who is he? Luca looked at her. Really looked like someone bracing to reopen a scar. The man who killed the woman before you wasn't Dominic. Dominic only used what was left of the fallout. The real threat was someone else, someone who wanted to break me before the Moretti Empire became mine. Claire's pulse hammered. Who? Before Luca could answer, Roman's earpiece crackled violently. Boss Dominic's convoy spotted heading toward Pier 19. Heavy loadout. Looks like a grab-and-trade setup. Claire stiffened. He's expecting me. He won't get you, Luca growled. But he thinks he will. That gives us the advantage. Roman shook his head. Boss, you're not thinking clearly. Dominic knows we're coming. He'll have snipers, groundmen, backups. That's fine, Luca snapped. Let him stack the deck. I'm still flipping the table. Claire stepped between them. Luca, this isn't strategy. This is revenge. He stopped. Her voice softened. And revenge gets you killed. His gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of vulnerability slipping through. This isn't revenge, Claire. This is prevention. Dominic has already crossed the line. If he doesn't pay tonight, he'll keep coming. For you. For Evan. For anyone he thinks I care about. Claire's throat tightened. You can't do this alone. A faint, humorless smile touched Luca's lips. Who said anything about alone? Roman opened the trunk of the SUV, revealing tactical gear, radios, and a tablet with live drone feeds. The screen showed Pier 19 Dominic's men unloading crates beneath the dark waterfront lights. Luca turned to Claire, voice low. You're staying here, protected. No arguments. Claire's chin lifted. I'm not hiding anymore. His eyes flashed, not with anger, but fear. If you come with me, he'll use you again. And if you go alone, she said, he'll kill you. Before Luca could respond, the drone feed glitched. Then a face appeared on screen. Dominic. Smirking. Come find me, Claire, he said. If you dare. Pier 19 was colder than Claire expected, an empty stretch of cracked asphalt, rusted crates, and the metallic scent of the Hudson drifting through the wind. Fog clung to the air like the city was holding its breath. Headlights sliced through the darkness as Moretti vehicles formed a perimeter, engines rumbling like distant thunder. Claire stepped out before Luca could stop her. Claire, he snapped, gripping her arm. Get back in the car. No, she said, steady and unshaken. Dominic wants me scared. I refuse to give him that. Roman muttered under his breath. Boss, she's not wrong. Hale's expecting a frightened bargaining chip. He's not expecting this. This being Claire standing tall on the pier, wrapped in one of Roman's tactical jackets, chin lifted against the wind. She still shook, fear didn't vanish, but something deeper carried her now. Determination, fury, love she didn't dare name yet. Luca searched her face, frustration warring with admiration. If anything happens, then it happens to both of us, she said quietly. I'm done watching from the sidelines. A beat. Then Luca exhaled shakily. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small earpiece. Stay close to me, never out of sight. Understand? Claire nodded. Lights flared across the pier. Dominic's convoy rolled forward sleek black SUVs, doors opening in perfect synchronization. His men stepped out, armed and confident. And then Dominic himself emerged, hands in his pockets, smiling like the devil on a casual stroll. Claire, he called, voice echoing. You came. How touching. Claire stepped forward before Luca could block her. Let Evan go, she demanded. Now. Dominic tisked softly. You negotiate like you matter here. His eyes glinted. You matter only because Luca is foolish enough to care. Luca moved beside her, every muscle coiled. Let the boy go, Dominic. Oh, I will, Dominic said. But first, your leverage. He snapped his fingers. 2 Hale soldiers dragged out a trembling figure and shoved him toward the edge of the pier. Evan. Claire gasped. Luca reached for her, but she was already running. Evan stumbled, calling her name through the wind. Dominic raised his hand lazily. A gun cocked. Time to choose, Claire, he said. Your life or his. Luca lunged forward. Don't touch them! Dominic smiled, cold and delighted. Then stop me! The gun fired, and Claire screamed as someone fell into the water below. The splash echoed like a gunshot across the pier. Claire's scream tore through the night as she ran toward the edge, boots slipping on wet concrete. The icy wind whipped her hair as she peered into the dark water below, rippling, violent, impossible to see through. "Evan!" Her voice cracked. "Evan!" Luca grabbed her before she could jump. "Claire, stop! We'll get him! Roman, lights on the water!" Search beams swept the river, white arcs slicing through the black surface. Claire clawed at Luca's grip, her breath shattering in her chest. "You promised," she sobbed. "You said he'd be safe. You said—" "I know," Luca whispered, voice breaking. "I know. I won't lose him. I won't let you lose him." Behind them, Dominic watched with quiet satisfaction, hands still in his pockets. "Touching," he mused. A man brought to his knees by a waitress. Luca turned, fury erupting through every line of his body. "You think this breaks me? You think this is enough?" "Oh no," Dominic said with a smirk. "This isn't the break. This is the crack. The break comes when she realizes you were the reason her life became a target." Claire froze. Her tears slowed, not because she'd stopped crying, but because her brain had stopped moving altogether. She turned to Luca. What is he talking about?" Luca's face changed. The rage didn't disappear, but something heavier slid behind it, guilt. "Claire," he breathed, "listen to me." "No," she whispered. "Just tell me." Dominic stepped closer, savoring each word. "She doesn't know, does she? About the woman before her? About why you were being watched? About why she became the perfect leverage?" "Enough," Luca growled. But Dominic wasn't finished. "You didn't tell her she wasn't chosen by accident." He chuckled. "You're predictable, Luca. You fall for strong women who refuse you. You always have. And enemies know your patterns better than you do." Claire felt her stomach twist. "Luca, is any of that true?" He closed his eyes, pained. "Claire, what happened before? What happened to her? It wasn't your burden. I didn't want you to carry, so you hid it from me," she whispered. Luca opened his eyes raw, stripped bare. "I hid it because I didn't want to lose you." Before Claire could answer, Roman shouted from the pier. "Boss, we found someone in the water!" Claire spun toward the river, hope stabbing through her like lightning, only to see the figure they pulled up wasn't Evan at all. Claire's hope shattered when the soaked figure was pulled onto the pier. A Hale soldier, unconscious, water pouring from his jacket. Not Evan, not even close. Her knees buckled and she caught herself on the railing, a sob slipping free. "No, no, please, Evan!" she cried into the wind. Luca was already barking orders. "Sweep the entire river. 2-mile radius. Now!" Roman sprinted down the dock with a flashlight, directing divers into the freezing water. Claire stood motionless, the world around her collapsing into static until a distant sound broke through. A horn. A boat engine. Claire spun toward the water. A small tugboat appeared through the fog. A figure on deck waving frantically. Roman lifted his flashlight, froze, and yelled, "Claire, it's him!" Claire didn't think. She ran. Her heart beat so violently, she couldn't feel her legs as she sprinted down the pier. Luca chased after her, calling her name, but she reached the edge first just as the boat pulled alongside. And there, wrapped in a life vest 2 sizes too big, was Evan. Shivering. Crying. Alive. "Claire!" He sobbed as she pulled him into her arms, falling to her knees on the dock. She kissed his hair, his face, his cold cheeks, tears soaking into his jacket. "You're safe," she whispered over and over, voice breaking. "You're safe, baby. I've got you. I've got you." Luca knelt beside them, breath unsteady with relief. "How did he?" The tugboat captain leaned over, found him clinging to a floating pallet. Said some bad men tossed him near the markers. "Lucky we passed by." Claire squeezed Evan tighter, shaking with gratitude and fury and love all at once. Luca placed a shaking hand on her back. "Claire, I'm so sorry." She looked up at him, eyes red, voice raw. You should have told me everything. About the woman before me, about the danger, about why Dominic chose me. Luca nodded, swallowing hard. I thought by hiding it, I could keep you untouched by my world. But Dominic is right about one thing. I am predictable when I care. His voice lowered. And I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in a very long time. Claire's breath caught not from fear this time, but from the weight of truth. But before she could answer, Roman's radio crackled sharply. Boss Dominic's gone, and he left something behind. Luca stood, eyes narrowing. What is it? A beat. Then the reply. A message for Claire. And whatever that message was, Roman looked terrified to repeat it. Roman held the phone like it might burn him. Claire, the message is for you. Claire steadied her breath. Evan leaned into her side, exhausted, but safe beneath the emergency blanket wrapped around him. Luca stayed close, tense, ready to tear the world apart if the message hinted at another threat. Roman handed her the device, a single text, from an unknown number. You chose correctly tonight, Claire. You saved the boy. But don't forget, power always comes with a price. And someday, I may collect it. Claire's stomach tightened, but something inside her shifted. Earlier tonight, those words would have broken her. Now, they only hardened her resolve. She handed the phone back. I'm done being afraid of him. Luca exhaled slowly, something like pride flickering in his eyes. You don't have to face him again. I'll make sure. No, she interrupted gently. We will? Together. The word together stilled him. Days later, the Moretti building towered over Manhattan as investigators, real federal agents, not bought ones, walked out with sealed files. Luca hadn't sought revenge the bloody way Dominic expected. He sought justice, paperwork, evidence, a trail of financial crimes Dominic never believed anyone could expose. Claire, with her years of bookkeeping study and sharp memory for details, had spotted the inconsistencies no one else noticed. Dominic's empire collapsed without a single bullet fired. That, Luca said quietly as news broke on every major channel, is how you destroy a man who loves chaos by giving him order. Claire watched the headlines, Evan asleep on the couch beside her, and felt something heal inside her. Not instantly, not magically, but firmly, steadily, like a wound finally closing. When Luca approached her on the balcony, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind him, he looked different, lighter, human. I need to say something, he murmured. I didn't expect you. I didn't deserve you. But you, Claire, you changed everything. She turned toward him, heart softening. You changed me too. He reached for her hand slowly, respectfully, without claiming it. She placed her fingers in his. For the first time in years, Claire felt safe, not because danger was gone, but because she wasn't facing the world alone anymore. Their world was no longer Brooklyn versus Manhattan. It was one life, rebuilt from chaos, sharpened by truth, steadied by resilience. But as they stood together, the skyline glowing like a promise, a single vibration buzzed in Claire's phone pocket. Unknown number, we're not finished. Sometimes when a story ends like this, we're left sitting quietly, just feeling. And if you're still here with me right now, my friend, then something in this journey touched your heart in its own way. Maybe it reminded you of your strength. Maybe it reminded you of the people you would fight for. Or maybe it whispered a truth you needed today. You are braver than the world ever gave you credit for. The Stoics said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And Claire's story shows exactly that. She didn't choose the danger, the fear, or the chaos, but she chose who she became inside it. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, the impediment to action advances action. Sometimes the thing meant to break us is the thing that shapes us. So whatever you're going through, breathe. Stand tall. And remember, storms don't create heroes, they reveal them. If this story made you feel something, even a small spark, I'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe. Not for the numbers, but so we can keep walking through these stories together, healing, growing, and rediscovering our strength one chapter at a time.